So I found the Berkeley Psychic Institute while I was still working that job
Mm.
and studied with them for 2 years and ended up moving. So I could no longer participate with that organization. Started running a psychic fair, started going because, I like doing readings. I was Rita the psychic chick, not Dr. Rita. I was just Rita the psychic chick. And
That's cool.
and so I was building that piece of the business, but I wasn't trying to build the business. I just really loved doing it.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today we have Dr. Rita Louise with us. She is a medical intuitive. We're going to talk to her about all kinds of things around the paranormal, around intuitive energy, and the work that she does in her life. So, first of all, thank you so much, Rita, for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
But thanks for having me, Joe. I've been really looking forward to this interview, so I'm ready.
I love it. I wanted to go back a little bit. Sometimes I start at when you kind of knew what you were going to be doing in your life, but I'm going to go back to your childhood. And I want to ask you if you, growing up, had the same feelings around yourself that you do now. So, the person that you have become, if you had any indications as a child that you were kind of coming down this road in your life, in your career path, the things you're doing, if there's any indications that came up in your childhood, and if you did have those, what those were.
So there's only two things that I've really ever wanted. Well, three things that I've really ever wanted to do with my life. One was to be an Olympic gymnast, which I figured out that by the time I got to that place, I already was too old. So it was like, okay, X that one out. Um,
Right.
and I wanted to be an archaeologist.
Okay.
And I wanted to do that. I got turned on to the theory of evolution in like fifth grade, and I was fascinated by it. And growing up, we had to read a book every 2 weeks for our allowance. So it wasn't about chores, it was about reading a book. And I never was interested in fiction. I only ever read nonfiction, even as a kid. So I had kind of worked my way through the archaeology and anthropology department at the library, and like a bucket list item was going to La Brea Tar Pit, which happens to be in downtown LA, which was kind of shocking to me. And like getting a little bit of tar that was oozing up out of the sidewalk. That was only weird people. And and then right on the heels of that, I was introduced to the concept. See, you're young, I'm old. There was two TV shows. So one was The Amazing Kreskin, and he had ESP, and he did kind of a variety show where he would bring people out to the audience and do psychic stuff and hypnotherapy. And then there was another show called The Sixth Sense. So not the movie, this was a TV series
Wow.
featuring Gary Collins, who is a parapsychology professor at a college, and he had ESP too. And so he would like touch a pen and the ghost of the dead person would appear and have a message, or he would touch a piece of paper and see Mary getting into her car and it driving off the cliff, and he would stop her and find out that the brake lines had been cut.
Mm.
I was into it. I was 13. So I moved from the archaeology and anthropology department to the kind of ESP area, which was about this big with maybe 15 books, right next to
Mhm.
the witchcraft stuff, which I wasn't going to touch because I went to Catholic school and I knew that was evil. And that's really been it.
Wow. So at 13 years old, you seen, so these two shows made a big impact on you.
Mhm.
And especially, it sounds like the Sixth Sense one was the one that really kind of grabbed a hold of it, or was it both?
It was both because the Sixth Sense kind of gave you more visual about
Mm-hmm.
like what it might be, even though it was totally misconception on my part,
Mm-hmm.
but I love the Amazing Kreskin. I mean, I have a 1973 autographed picture of Kreskin in my office.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's
It's
amazing.
amazing.
That is, I mean, it's somebody that influenced you. It's, it's something that kind of not pushed you in the direction you went, but a lot of people, the reason I ask it, right, is a lot of people who get into this type line of work, they've either had experiences growing up that change their mindset immediately. You could have somebody who was seeing their great grandmother coming to them at 5 years old. You could have somebody who had a drowning. I had one that someone had drowned and come back very young, and it kind of just opened up their whole question
Hmm.
period of who they really were, even as a young child. And in those instances, it's like that's been thrown at you, and you can fight it, but the problem is you've already seen the other side. You've already had these experiences. So now you're just, if you talk about it, everybody hushes you up. And then here they are like 50 years later talking to me about their situation, right? And there's people like that. But then there's other people who just are generally interested in the topic. I became interested in near death experiences in my teens because I was afraid of death. I was like, what is the purpose of this? I'm looking at myself and thinking, what am I? I started asking these really deep questions that everybody else didn't care about. They were all just wanting to know who to date and where's the next party. And I'm wondering, what is the purpose of it? What am I doing? Why do I have to walk to school? Why am I walking? And so, it led me down that path. So it was really about wanting to find out. It sounds like yours was the same way, in a sense that you found it interesting and you were kind of leading down that. As you got into your late adolescence, did you turn to more of a normal career field? Did you try the regular jobs and do the things through your life?
So I have an undergraduate degree in industrial design, and I worked as a drafter designer person for the military industrial complex.
Wow. So you did,
So
is,
I
is,
did
is the short answer. But yeah, so okay, so you did go to school and get a, like a
a,
diploma, whatever you call it, or what would you,
a bachelor's
a
degree,
bachelor's degree, and worked in that field for a long period of time in your life?
about 15 years.
Okay. Throughout that time, so this is getting interesting now. Throughout that time, were you still digging into the life of paranormal, spirituality? Was that still a big part of your life?
So I'll go to the end of this piece of the story. So I found the Berkeley Psychic Institute while I was still working that job
Mm,
and studied with them for 2 years and ended up moving. So I could no longer participate with that organization and started running a psychic fair, started going because, I like doing readings. I was Rita the psychic chick, not Dr. Rita. I was just Rita the psychic chick. And,
that's cool.
and so I was building that piece of the business, but I wasn't trying to build the business. I just really loved doing it. I
Hmm.
loved the experience. And then I got laid off, which I wanted to quit the job anyway and do it full time. But this is a spirit thing. I got laid off. Okay, I'm going to back up the story because your audience will find this interesting. So it's September, and I'm getting these nudgings like, you need to pay off your debt. You need to pay off your debt. You need to pay off your debt. So I'm sending this credit card $300 and that one $500. And my figuring was by the end of March, all that would be left, I was married, would be the house payment and a car payment, and then your basic bills.
Hmm.
March. January 18th, I got laid off, which I was okay with, but I got 9 weeks of severance pay. Guess where that landed me? To March.
Oh, wow.
And I got unemployment on top of it. So
Mm,
so the unemployment kind of carried me while I made the transition.
right.
It was like,
You know what? I find it's so interesting because I talk about this all the time. I bring guests on and they tell me their life story, they tell me some of their things, and then there's a correlation with my own personal life. And it's so shocking because I go, wow, other people are having similar experiences to me. Mine was that I worked in banking, worked in corporate banking, and I'd had enough. I wasn't feeling it, and I was gonna quit. I'd had enough. I threw in, went to quit. My boss wouldn't let me quit. He said, "You've just had, your first kid. I'm not letting you quit. It's just not going to happen. I'm like, yeah, I quit. I don't want anything. I get home. I had a phone call. They had put me on stress leave. The stress leave was for 3 months. And then I went on to like an unemployment thing. And in that time, I built my company of teaching music and all these different things that I was doing. And it was just enough time for me to just get enough people to replace the income I was making in the job. And
Hmm.
at the time, it was more of a place of, okay, I just got to keep working at this and get where I want to get. But now looking back, there's like, I think a lot of us don't realize there's divine intervention that happens at certain points. And
Hmm.
until it's later and you
Right.
reflect back, you then see it. But when you're in the heat of it, you're not knowing that's actually happening. And so that's how I relate to what you just said. It's a little bit different, but same kind of thing.
But what's interesting, and I'm just going to respond to that, was when I got laid off and I got the severance pay, I knew it was divinely inspired because they had been bugging me since September to pay off the debt. I mean,
Mm,
not that I was like millions of dollars in debt, but you know, when you're paying this card, a couple $100 and this one $100 and whatever, it was like, no, you got to get rid of all that.
right, right.
So
It also sounds like the dream to only have a house payment and a car payment, especially in 2025. Our economies are a little different now than they used to be. It's a lot harder for people now to get to that point, but everybody tries. Um, but that's amazing. So you got to that point. Were you still Rita the psychic chick at the time, or were you
yes.
okay? So that's what you had started with, and how did that progress after that? Actually, I'm going to back up a second and ask you this because you started getting into this. You obviously were going to you said the Berkeley Psychic Institute. You were learning more about yourself, getting more educated in the idea of the other realms, or were you already there? Were you already picking
Okay.
up on intuition? I just
No,
kind of want to break into that a little bit.
okay, interesting question. So I was already well read
Mm,
on metaphysical stuff. I played with tarot cards. I knew what chakras were. I mean, I had a big base of knowledge. But Berkeley Psychic Institute, basically, they didn't teach you, they help validate your ability to receive information on psychic levels. And
mm,
so they didn't really teach much. They just made you sit in a room with other psychics and do readings. And that's what you did. You practice, 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 practice. And there would be a class, but they were usually kind of lame. And, and practice, and
right.
practice, and practice. And you got good. And psychic abilities it's like dancing, or it's like art, or it's like playing music. Some people are really good at it, and other people, not so much,
Hmm.
and people are on that spectrum. And, my goal as a kid was to become psychic. That's what I wanted to do. I mean, what I was going to do with it, I didn't look at it as a career. I just thought it would be cool, I don't even know what I was thinking. I just wanted it. And it wasn't until after all of this stuff transpired that I came to understand that I had been very psychic my whole life, and I just didn't ever know it, and so they just made it their goal. The Berkeley Psychic Institute's goal was to make it so that you could sit down, and this is their words, not mine, in the middle of Grand Central Station and do a reading with
Mm.
all people walking around. That you can just sit there across from somebody and just get in the zone and just be like, and do it.
Did it take to a point where you did get validation from others from reading them to understand that you were actually gifted, or did you already know this? Were you picking up on senses, whether it be like what were the main senses that were coming through when you were sitting with someone to know that you were picking up on things? How did you see it or feel it?
So primarily a clairvoyant, which means I see things in my mind's eye. And so when I was at Berkeley, they made you take a couple of prerequisite courses, a meditation class, a energy work class, and then I was in the main program. And they had two different things that you could do for the first 3 months. And so I did the healing clinic thing. And so they would So when you read there was always a group of people. However many people showed up, that's how many people would read a client. And so there'd be a person sitting in a chair. So let's say you're the client, and then I'm the center chair, and then there would be chairs going off to the side. And so, and the center chair kind of facilitated what was going on. And so I was in the program for 3 weeks. I didn't really know what was going on. And this woman came in and she had a hair salon. And she was like, well, my business is falling off. I'm losing people, blah, 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 And so she wanted to understand what was going on and then get some healing around it.
Mm.
Cool. And so the the smart people, because I was like way on the end, and that night, like extra people showed up. So there was a pretty full room. So they're saying, oh, you have these past life contracts about this and these present life contracts about that. And I'm like, sorry, but that's not getting butts in chairs. And
Right.
so the facilitator said, well, is there anybody else that wants to add something? So very nervous because I used to be really shy, like really shy. I like raised my hand and they said, well, Rita, what do you want to add? And I started to talk, and the woman says, when you read with your eyes closed. So I don't know if you've ever tried to talk with your eyes closed, but it really is a skill, kind of
Mm.
like walking and chewing gum. It's a skill. So I closed my eyes and I said to the woman, I said, did you have a lady with long red hair working for you? Yes. Did she leave? And when she left, was she really angry? Because I just kept seeing this woman with long red hair with like a purse and slamming her stuff down like on a desk or a
Mm.
workstation. And she said yes. And I said, well, her anger energy is keeping people from coming in. I didn't think anything of it because I have gotten information like that my whole life. And, it wasn't anything new or different for me,
Hmm.
like internally. And then I opened my eyes, and the entire row of like 10 or 12 people were all leaning over in their chair looking at me.
Mm.
And I got validated. And so all of the things that had happened earlier in my life got validated. Like,
Right.
oh, that's what a psychic experience is all about? Had no clue.
So you started that way. You're going through. So you get visual. You get what'd you
Clairvoyance,
clairvoyance.
clairaudience, which
Hmm.
is hearing, and then
Yeah.
clara consciousness, which is knowing, and then clairaudience, clairsentience, which is feeling.
Yeah. I've been told that's what I have. If I am feeling anything, that's the biggest thing I get. And I don't see visual. Um, I don't think I do. I don't think I do.
Okay,
But
well, we're going to test you right now.
are we? We're gonna
Okay.
test me? Okay,
I'm
sure.
going to test you right now.
Okay, let's
So
do it.
just as you're just sitting there, can you see your car in your head?
Yes, I can see my car. Yeah.
Can you see your mom's face?
Hmm.
Can you see any pet you might have?
Yes,
So when you receive information on a clairvoyant level, it comes in on that same kind of channel.
I
So if
see.
you're a good visualizer, then you more than likely receive information that way.
Okay. It's just a matter of having the awareness, which is the biggest thing that I'm kind of noticing is being aware that these things are happening.
Hmm.
Because I think there's things
Right.
that happen throughout our day, through our day to day, that it happens to us, but we just see it as such a normal thing or occurrence. We're not really seeing it as any different. Once we become aware of it and we put attention on it, we can then validate it. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Or I like saying we just don't listen to ourselves because the information comes through but we just sit there and write it off.
Hmm.
So, the stupid example I give is you get up in the morning and you think, oh, I should take a jacket with me. But you look outside, it's a bright sunny day, and you just blow it off. But then you go somewhere and it starts to rain or the weather changes and it's freezing. You're like, oh man, I should have brought that sweater with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Spirit was saying, take a sweater with you. And you're like, nah.
Right. Right.
Okay, but I have to share. I've been saving this story for you today, saving it.
Perfect.
So I'm working on this house. I bought a project house. That's what I call it. And that was built in 1860, and I'm getting close to being done. And so I'm working on closets and putting like the closet rail in, and you have to put a support to hold the rail up and whatever. So these support things at Lowe's were 25 bucks, and I needed at least three. And I'm like, I don't want to spend $75 on these supports, but I know it really needs it so that the clothes rod doesn't fall down.
Right.
So I'm at the gym this morning and and it's like, okay, and I always kind of have a plan of what I'm going to do during the day. And it's like, so one of my plans was to go to Aldi's, which is a discount place. I don't know if you have them where you are. And then Lowe's to go look for these dumb racks. Well, I'm at the gym and I'm rowing away and they're like, so I'm getting this very clear. You need to go to Aldi's first. And, like, don't even go to the house because if you're there, you're not going to go to Aldi's. Just go. Just go. I'm like, and I just surrender to it. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna go. And like they have little home improvement paintbrushes and light bulbs and whatever. And I'm looking through that area, not really seeing it. And then I turn around and I look down, and there are the racks on the shelf, and they were like not super cheapy ones. They were nice ones.
Hmm.
3.99. 3.99. 12 bucks
Wow.
for three of them instead of 25 bucks a piece. That was a big thank you moment. See, look, I just got like goosebumps.
Wow. And when you do that, that's so interesting. Anybody that follows the Soul Inspired will know that when I have a I call it like a hit, and I'm talking and I'm getting really passionate about what I'm talking about, and I'm verifying something or validating something, and I get goosebumps, it's always like my intuitive saying you're correct, like
Hmm.
you're on track. So the fact that you did that, that is so funny. I just had an interview this morning. I did the same thing in the interview because something came up and I went, "Oh, look, I'm getting the validation for that." So that's amazing. And you trusted your intuitive instinct, and that's probably one of the main things is to trust our intuition. Sometimes, we get confused about our intuition if our brain gets involved though. And so I've found personally, and maybe you can validate this working in the work that you do, is that I've started to notice it's more when I get something that I think is actually more of a intuitive hit, it's very like it's very I don't want to say the word assertive, but it's very quick. Like there's no feeling involved. It's just a quick message. And I don't kind of get a feeling around, like I don't get in touch with my feelings around it. It's just like, okay, blah, blah, blah. So I'll be working with a student and I'll get this direct message and I'll just say it. I'll just say it. And now they'll go and they'll validate that that is correct. And I go, oh, weird. Because before I would get it and I go, oh, I'm not going to say that because that's a strange thing. Or I start to question it or I try to reinterpret it in a different way. Does that make sense? Am I kind
No,
of
it
making?
totally makes sense. It
Okay.
totally makes sense.
Yeah.
But that is people sit there and they go, "Oh, I need to open up my chakras and blah blah blah." And it's like, "No, you need to pay attention to what's going on inside and then potentially act on it or at least recognize when you're not acting on it so that down the road you can act on it."
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I do a lot of health work with people,
Hmm.
and I'm more of a diagnostician than a person who's going to work with you and be like, okay, take this supplement. Okay, call me in a month and we're going to check in and adjust your med. I'm not that person, but if you got some weird thing going on and nobody can figure it out, I'm your girl.
Right.
And then because I'm a naturopath, I have a degree as a naturopathic physician and a PhD in natural health counseling. I'll give them, it's like, okay, well, these are the supplements or these are the things that you need to do. You need to go to the chiropractor. You need to take this supplement. You need to dump your boyfriend, I mean, whatever it might be.
Right.
It's always something.
Right.
And there are times, I mean, my personal favorite is I'm working with someone and she has like issues with kidney stones and I get hydrangea. I mean, I just hear hydrangea in my head.
Okay.
And I'm like, I have hydrangeas growing in my yard. I mean, what's with the hydrangea? I mean, I had zero clue why I get hydrangea, but I listen and validate. Hydrangea for kidney issues. Boom. It makes it so you don't get kidney stones.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, sweet. So now I have really like stepped up the, you tell me something really weird.
Ah, right.
And
Yeah.
I'm just, it's like trust, but validate. And usually I have my computer and I'll look it up to double check that it's not just some weird thing, but it has never turned out to be a weird thing. It
Hmm.
just seems weird.
No, absolutely. And when you're working with somebody as a medical intuitive, are they coming to you and telling you what the issue is and what they need to do in order to fix it? Or do you sometimes get into like in front of somebody and you can right away feel what issue that is that they're experiencing? Like do you get an almost I don't want to say a sympathetic feeling? Like do you feel like somebody has a hand issues, because I have a hand issue on my left hand, for instance. Would you feel that in your own hand, or do you just sense it and need them to tell you what it is, and you would give them kind of intuitive feelings around
So
it?
I'm going to say both.
Okay.
And so when I'm working with somebody, because people are like, well, you're supposed to tell me, but I'm very visual. And so I need to look. And so to just, and so when I'm working with someone and they just want me to do this like general assessment, I start at the top of their head and I work my way down through all
Mm,
their organs and body parts and whatever, and my thought is you're paying me a lot of money. And so, and you know where your owies are. You're not just calling me just to call me. I mean, I have a couple of clients that call for like a physical, and that is what they want me to do is to, we have kind of a running list of what's, their main issues that I do a deeper check. But if there's any changes going on in their body, and we do that once a year and that's cool. But that's if I'm spending my time looking at your ears and what you have is an ankle problem, we're really not going to spend a whole lot of time problem solving.
right.
But if you know you have an ankle problem because you've been on crutches for a week, it just makes more sense to me that you say, well, I'm having an ankle problem.
Right.
And then I can like give you some guidance on it and spend,
Hmm.
5, 10 minutes or however long it takes to work through it.
Absolutely. No, I would agree that that's the approach that anybody should really take. I think a lot of times it kind of reminds me of the first time I went to a psychic when I was 25, and I went to it after I lost my grandmother. And I remember I went with the intention of she needs to prove to me I'm not going to give her any information. I had to, she needs to prove to me that everything that's going to come through is I need to be I need proof that this is real. And I remember there'd be questions being asked, and I'd be so hesitant to answer the question because I didn't want to give her too much information because I'd say, "Oh, well, I told you the answer." And I think a lot of people come to psychics with that intention sometimes, especially if they're a little bit skeptical. And she she blew my mind. I like everything she said validated over the years. It was pretty wild. Very gifted. And so I don't know why we do that. I think sometimes we want to. So someone might come to you and say, "Okay, what's wrong with me?" Right? Well, you can sit
Well,
there
I,
and
I
scan
have
the
them do that, and then I'm like, well, you're paying me a lot of money, and I can go through your body, but you're not going to get any value because I'm going to say, your lungs are messed up. Moving on,
right,
because I
right,
only got so much time.
right. No, that makes sense. Absolutely. But if you know a specific area that you're working with, you might be able to dig in further as to how they can heal it and what caused it and the things around it, the energy around it. I'm assuming.
Oh, definitely. I mean, most illnesses, and not all of my clients energetically will let me go here or that I need to go there. There's always some psycho-spiritual piece to what's going on. And so
Hmm.
there's what's going on functionally, but then there's what's going on in their psyche, their thoughts, emotions, insecurities, whatever that that is sitting underneath the illness or disease in the first place
Mm.
that is causing it to occur.
Wow.
which is like a whole show right there by
No
itself.
doubt. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that would take us a long time, but I appreciate you
Well,
kind of
but I
expanding it.
didn't answer the second part of your question.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
this is just very quick about the kinesthetic. That's the word kinesthetic.
Hmm.
So when I'm working with someone, I mean, they have to have like a lot of bad mojo for me to totally feel it just walking up on them. But if I'm working on them and I'm like doing like they're complaining about something and I'm poking around in their head and they have a headache, bonk, bonk, bonk. My head starts to hurt or they complain
Mm.
about something and I'm poking around in their back and now my back is hurting and it's like, oh my God, and I can kind of rate their pain level
Wow.
based on the discomfort that I'm feeling. And then as soon as I move off that body part, it's gone. Thank God.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what did you call that? That was called
Kinesthetic.
kinesthetic. So that's taking on kind of the pain of the other
It's
person.
feeling other people's feeling their feelings,
Hmm.
but on a body level.
I don't think I'd want that gift. I don't think that's a great gift to have. Yeah, that's probably one of the ones I wouldn't want, but it can help in the instance of what you do because it
It
can,
really helps with what I
yeah,
do.
yeah, absolutely. Were you okay? So you got into that work, and that's the work that you continue to do now. Growing up, or even in the current life you're now, do you have you had personal paranormal experiences that are outside of just the psyche, just having psychic phenomena? I always wonder that because I've had a few moments in my life that kind of took me away from this reality, if you will, right? So our day to day, just a few moments. Some people have it when they lose someone, some they have, something happens in their life. But have you had those moments in your life? Or have you just always had just a gift of going into the psychic kind of just healing and helping in that kind of manner?
You mean like kind of like dimension shifting?
Yeah, like seeing alternate realities, seeing things. I mean, I talk to people on a daily who've literally left their bodies, seen loved ones. Some people have just had out of body experiences. Some people have seen, spiritual phenomena. Some people go into the ET side of things, UAPs, UFOs, aliens, those types of things. I'm just wondering if you've ever had anything around that in
Well, I
your
mean,
life
I
that
used to do
validated.
ghost hunting, if you want to count that. But as far as like having an out of body experience, you know, I'll probably say I'm sure I have. I mean, there's something called dissociation where you leave your body, where your consciousness leaves your body. And it's usually tied to the freeze response. So as an example, you're dissociated if you're driving your car, but what you're doing is thinking about work. You're not driving your car. I mean, your body's driving your car, but your psyche is not driving the car.
Mm,
Like whoever used to drive my car before, because I would be like, I'd be all over the place, was not a good driver.
right. Right. I gotcha. Right.
And so like I would spend a lot of time not present, and so
Hmm.
that's been part of my journey is staying present, being present,
Hmm.
especially when I'm driving,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so if you haven't had those
that
experiences,
I'm
what,
aware of,
it,
that I've like made a mental note. It's kind of like the psychic thing. I didn't think I was psychic. True
hmm.
story. Worked at this company. I was 20, 21. I'll say 20. And I have to always preface this with the story is being told from the viewpoint of a 20-year-old. So there was the lab assistant who was my friend, and we would like race chairs up and down the hall. We were stupid. And then there was the manager, and we would always go and get a soda at like 3 o'clock. And I would always ask the manager if he wanted a soda, and he would give me money when I bring back a soda. And that was our relationship. I'd say hi in the morning and I would get him a soda. Well, he didn't come into work one day. And so this is like before Rita's psychic anything, okay? And the next day I go in and he had like this heavy duty comb over, and he had a little band-aid on the top of his head underneath the hair. So I think you can see my personality well enough, and so I thought that he had a zit and it was like puffy and gooey, and he put the band-aid up there because it was like underneath the comb over that was pretty obviously a comb over. So that's what was in my mind. That's in my mind. And I walked up to the man, crossed my arms, looked him straight in the face, and said, "Well, where are you yesterday? Having them check for a brain tumor?" And the hair stood up on my arms, and I started shaking. And he looked at me, turned around, and walked out of the room. I didn't know what the hell happened. I did not know what happened, but I was just like,
Wow.
so the assistant, my friend, comes in screaming at me. He thinks I told. And it's like, told me what? He goes, that's where he was yesterday, having them check for a brain tumor.
Wow.
But I'm not psychic or nothing. But see, I didn't even know. I didn't even
Right.
go, oh, I had a psychic experience. I just said, oh, that was weird.
Mm-hmm.
And, so if I had an out of body experience, I don't know. I may probably just said, oh, that was weird.
So yeah, so it just seems like you had moments where you were just being yourself. You were just being yourself, and these gifts were already within you, and you were acting on them, and then learning afterwards the impact that they had. And you started to harness those gifts and obviously grow in your work and the field of work that you're doing. And now you help
Mhm.
people that way. You mentioned earlier, and I think I seen it when I was first getting in contact with you, that you had an interest in, this is right out there, but ancient aliens. And I wanted to know where that came from, why that is something that is in there. Is that just something like me? Like I got interested in near-death experiences in my late teens. Is that the same thing with you? You just had a you have interest in it, or did this come up somehow?
So, so I wanted to be an archaeologist, so Ancient Aliens looks into old stuff, and there's the whole architectural thing and whatever. But I remember reading Eric von Daniken's Chariot of the Gods, like, I don't even remember how old I was when I read that. And that really had an impact on me, even though I was pretty young and didn't really remember the book. But
Mm.
then I also recall, like, I was in my, I don't know, I was that job, mid 20s, mid to late 20s. And for some reason, I'm reading parts of the Old Testament and I'm reading, I don't like, one of my favorite Bible stories is Moses on Mount Sinai getting the Ten Commandments because it reads like an alien encounter.
Yeah.
Sorry, but if you just sit there and like scratch out God and you write alien in for some of the stuff in the very early parts of the Bible, it reads just fine. And it doesn't seem wrong or out of context. And
Wow.
so I was reading it going, hmm, and I totally forgot about the Eric Von Daniken book, but and I have to add in, and I have to give my mom props. So my mom was like a Star Trek, One Step Beyond, The Prisoner. So she would watch all of these like sci-fi. She sent us to the movie to go see 2001: A Space Odyssey. This was a great movie. Here, go see this movie.
Mm.
You know? And
Yeah.
so, I really have to credit her for that because we were brought up on the outer limits,
Right.
and creature features and all of that weird stuff that most families like Lawrence Welk, we never watched that.
Yeah. Well, especially at a time when, although it was out there, it was kind of laughed upon. I mean, it wasn't being taken serious, although there were encounters, there were all kinds of things coming out. But now you look at it, I mean, you've got people going to government, you got whistleblowers talking about actual, non-human intelligence. They call them NHIs now, call them UAPs instead of UFOs. We just put a new name on it so that it doesn't sound so weird from the earlier days, but it's becoming more of a, it's not as, is it the word faux pas, it's not as weird or strange anymore. Like it is strange to some people to hear, but it's something that I think that we're getting closer to. Just the other day, maybe a week ago or so ago, they were talking about how they're discovering these cylinders beyond the pyramids, below the pyramids, that they can't explain, that's come out
Hmm.
with all this new technology. And now it's all being kind of not hushed, but that should be biggest thing in the news. Instead, it's, whatever's out there. But I don't know if it's because we don't want to scare people, or I don't really understand it. I don't know where that comes from, why we wouldn't want to know our past, our truth. And have you ever kind of wrapped your mind around that, why it's being hidden?
Actually, I've just released well, one article in particular, but two articles dealing more with alternative health, but just the silencing of stuff. So let me
Hmm.
ask you this question. Where do you stream to? Where do you, because I'm going to say some stuff and I just don't want them to like take your show off.
Oh, I see what you're saying. This is on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. It's
I mean, do you care? I haven't
no.
ever talked about it because I'm releasing the second of a series of articles.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that I discovered, and is that Google, I mean, everyone knows that Google sits there and rates pages and they devalue pages. And so I've been online with my own domain since the late 90s. And so I've done all my own webpage design and have kept up to date with whatever the current thing is. And in 2020, my webpage
Hmm.
it went from like around page 3, that was kind of my normal placement, to page 17.
Hmm.
17. So I thought, well, maybe I need to clean up the site because they tell you that, you need to do this and your title needs to be this long and blah, 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 blah. These are the things you need to do to get back to number one. So I do all this stuff, which wasn't really that bad. And it moved me up to page 11. So then recently, I found out that Google has what they call their quality raters guide. And they have 1,600 people that look at web pages and they like give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down based on very specific criteria. And so if you talk about things that are outside of the mainstream narrative,
Hmm.
they give you a thumbs down and you get devalued.
Wow.
And it killed me because they give three examples of like non-trustworthiness. So if you make claims that lemons cure or basically like something that's not verified through mainstream medicine can make some kind of a cure, thumbs down.
Hmm.
Like you can take ginger for nausea, thumbs down. The second one was 11 was an inside job. And the third one was control of government. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I am so screwed. I
Yeah.
am so screwed because I talk about all three of those things.
Right. Right. I see where you're going.
And
Hmm.
so, but that's what you really are seeing a lot of is that if you talk about things that's outside of the orthodox mainstream, not just health, then they
Hmm.
devalue. And
Hmm.
that's why I wrote the article that I'm going to be sending them out to elected officials and, you know, other places to, start creating some visibility on it. I mean, because people talk censorship, but they don't sit there and talk about the mechanism at which they're doing it.
Right. Right. And so what you're saying is that depending on the content that you're producing, that there's larger powers that be that will stop that from being pushed to the masses for a
Right.
particular agenda. And
So it
so,
used to be,
mhm,
I'm going to stay with health because that's where my thing is. So it used to be herbs for tinnitus, natural remedies for tinnitus. I'm just making up an example. And so you would get multiple web pages that would maybe have a list of 5 or 6 different things or natural things you can do for tinnitus. It's like, put a hot towel on it, whatever. You don't see those articles anymore. Everything is PubMed, Cleveland Clinic. If you do find an article like that, it is so watered down. Eat a healthy diet, make sure you get 8 hours of sleep a night. I mean, it is just so not helpful
mm,
at all because all of the people that either sold products or talked about it have been bumped.
Wow. Wow. And it's, it's probably an area that people don't want to think about because nobody wants to feel that we're being controlled or manipulated into the content that we're ingesting. But it's true. It's
It's
true.
true.
The beautiful thing that I've liked about this show is that, cross my fingers, for the most part, we've grown at a pretty good rate. There's been obviously some questionable content that comes out even on my channel on Soul Inspired, but it's I'm hoping that there are changes coming around free uh I don't know what the word would be, but I'm hoping that these powers are kind of lightening up um over time. I don't know how that happens, and that gets down a deep rabbit hole and a huge conversation. Uh,
Yeah, and I don't have the answers, but actually a friend of mine sent me because I was telling him about my article. He has a show too, and I'm like, yeah, you should have me to come on and talk about this topic specifically. And he sent me this article about it was a blogger who was writing about how AI generated web pages are bumping people who are writing their own stuff. And I can't remember, I didn't like study the article, but I think they were like a cooking blogger. I mean, they were just something,
mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
And their ranking, which apparently they were pretty high. I mean, they said like they've lost thousands of dollars worth of business
Wow.
because this AI generated stuff is getting higher rankings.
That's incredible.
So there's the
Mhm.
censorship, but then there's all the people that are behind it.
Mhm.
If you have a company that makes health products, so there was a guy who made these like nasal inhaler things called Breathe Free, and it was great. And I ran out and I wanted to get some more, can't find them.
Mm.
And I'm sure his business is gone because he got devalued so heavily that it just wasn't worth it anymore.
Well, we're kind of in the business of not keeping people healthy.
Well, you can't like sell medication for that.
Right. Right. I have kind of a positive approach with everything. I always think to myself, but if we're moving into this next phase of our existence, that hopefully that will start to overtake those that try to keep us kind of in that space.
Mhm.
That's my hope. It's the same thing with the same hope with the show, is that people get to listen to other people's experiences. Being that I talk to people all the time who've had very spiritual experiences, and even if it's just a moment that they can look at and say, "Oh wow, I'm much more powerful than I thought I am. I'm not giving myself credit for the actual being that I am." Right? Because so
Cool.
often we feel so small. We feel so small, but we're not. Look at the things you do. You talk to people and you can read their energy. You can read the things that would help them and benefit them in their life. And you must at sometimes just think to yourself, wow, where's this coming from? I would assume you have a very strong spiritual connection at this point to your belief systems. I don't know. Is that true? I shouldn't assume it.
I
Would
mean,
you?
I'm not really a religious person,
Mm-hmm,
in a traditional way,
mm-hmm,
but I feel like I have a very strong relationship with God. I mean, I feel like that's, where it's all coming from,
mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
I'm not making it up. I'm
Right.
not doing it to like get your money, I mean, it's not, it's just there.
It's funny. I generally say to people when that comes out, if I've seen it in a comment or something, I think to myself, there's so many easier ways to make money in this world than that, than doing spiritually driven work and working with people, whether it's one-on-one. Yeah, I'm sure there's people out there to make a profit and all that kind of stuff. But when you're following your pure passion, it feels very good.
But what I have seen is that when people shift their focus to I'm going to make money, they lose their connection because
Mhm.
now they're not connecting to source. They're not doing this. They're following the ego-driven path.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. I could even sense that, and I think it's one of the reasons why. Well, I remember when I started the show, I would just have been happy with a couple hundred viewers after the first year, if I'm being honest. And when I broke the 5,000 mark, I looked back and I went, holy smokes, I'm not even a year in. And it's because every time I do it from a place of love. Like I'm doing it from this place of I've called it my passion project. I'm going to always do that. I don't even care if I have a million followers someday. It's still going to be a passion project. Because if you come at it from your passion and from a kind of heart-centered place, but it's hard. And I'm going to be honest with everybody. I'm sure everybody out there who's, working and they're even working in maybe a field that they're very passionate about, it's easy to get lost in, okay, am I able to take care of myself? Am I able to? Because you have to, and this is the way that we work. But it's not to have main focus on that. That can't be your main driving force, I think is what you're trying to say. Obviously, we need to
Hmm.
take care of ourselves, but it's good to stay on track as to what was the main purpose and reason why you started in the first place. And it's the same thing with running any business, running a music business like myself, or I have my students come in and they don't know why they're like, I love singing, but sometimes I wonder why. Well, why did you start? What does it do for you? Quit thinking about how great you need to become. Think about why you started and what you're doing. What is like the purpose? You may not become the next Adele, but look what it's doing in your life for you, right? So I love all that. So you've been working in that for quite a while. Do you work specifically just one-on-one, or do you do groups, or how do people? I always like to
I
find out how
mean,
people connect with you and stuff like that. So,
so I work with people one on one. I used to have a huge web presence. That's been different,
mm,
so I've kind of shifted focus. And even though I used to do a lot of interviews, I've really ramped that up, as my main marketing tool. And
mhm.
then on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Central, I do Thursday Night Live with Dr. Rita Louise, and I open the show with about a 15-minute commentary on something. Like today was exploring the subconscious mind.
Mm.
And then I did one a couple of weeks ago about incubuses and succubi, however you say them plural. You never know. It's usually like, 10 minutes before the show, and I have my little notepad and I'm scribbling down some notes. It's like, okay, I'm ready. And but see, now Spirit has says, well, take all of these notes and write articles, even if they're short articles.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, wait a minute, I can go on StreamYard because that's what I stream through and download a transcript. So I already have
Oh,
like half the article kind of written.
mm-hmm. That's a good idea.
I'm like,
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, everybody's always against AI, but look what it can do for us at times, right? If it's something like that where it can pick up what you're saying, if we use it to our advantage, it can really help. And it can, because now not only are you doing that on a live stream, you're then putting that information out for people to pick up and read and
Hmm.
and gain the knowledge that way too. That's beautiful. I haven't looked into transcripts with YouTube and all that stuff, but I'm sure some people do that even on these podcasts and these videos.
Well, and one comment on AI, I was talking about people being devalued and like trying to find information.
Hmm.
So here's the new trick. If you're looking for a natural remedy for tinnitus or whatever you got going on, go to Grok, go to Chat GPT and put
Mm.
it in there because it bypasses the search engines.
Yeah, that's a good
Now, it
point.
might have a disclaimer, well, this hasn't really been tested or approved or blah, 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 but you can actually get information.
Mm. That's true. Yeah, because it takes it from everywhere. It's not just going through the whatever's been down or up, thumb up or thumb down, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good point. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so this has been amazing. So you do that live and people do you read people? Do you ever have anything like that where you actually have like live readings or anything? Have you ever done that? I'm just
So
curious.
so when people are there, so here's the routine. So I
Hmm.
do my 15-minute spiel, and then if you're in either Facebook or YouTube, and that's the easiest place for people to go to, Just Energy Radio on YouTube. So three words, Just Energy Radio, 7 p.m. Central, and you go in the chat room. And so this is how I tell people they need to do it. You have to say, "Hey, Dr. Rita, how are you today? Your hair looks really nice, and I would like a reading. And I want number three because you can pick one through three, and that's how many times I'll shuffle the cards. And then I'll pull a card for you and you get a reading. It's that simple.
Well, and it's just Energy Radio. Is that a website or how do people get in
That's the
contact with?
YouTube channel.
That's the YouTube channel. Do you have a website as well?
It's Soul Healer. See, it's a good show for you. Soulhealer.com.
Love it. That's funny. I always love when somebody has a website and it has the word soul in it. Soul inspired. My stage name when I was doing a lot of online playing, it was Soul Vision. That was also the name of my first album I put through. It's all soul related. So when I hear that, soulhealer.com. So that's how people would get in contact with any of the work
Hmm.
you're doing and to stay connected with the lives that you do and the work that
Yeah,
you do.
and there's a bunch of articles on there, which is why I got devalued. And so
Mhm.
obviously they're interesting reads. And
Yeah.
and all of my books, I've written 7 books, so all the books are on there, and there's
Wow.
some free downloads and stuff. There's stuff.
That's amazing. The only other thing that I didn't connect with you too much on tonight when this talk, I've loved talking to you, was around the idea of the paranormal. You said that you did some ghost hunting in your past. And do you stay away from that kind of stuff at this point?
No. So I mean, I was contacted by a paranormal group because they needed a psychic as part of their group.
Mm,
And so I just went because it was fun and I got to go read and it was fun. And so, but I'm not really like interested. Like I have a girlfriend, she's like, "Oh, well, we're going to go to this place." And it's like, whatever. I mean, I'm
right.
not interested in that way, but if you need my services, I'll go,
Hmm.
that kind of thing.
Okay.
And but I ended up writing a book called Dark Angels, an insider guide to ghost spirits and attached entities, which talks about ghost hunting and the concept of attached entities, which is a whole phenomena. And
Mm,
I'm pretty like eclectic because I just do what spirit tells me to do. People are like, "Well, what about this?" It's like, "What are you doing in 5 years?" It's like, no clue. I just
right.
do what they tell me to do.
And that's the place to be, right? Being spiritually driven, or a lot of people talk about being in touch with their guides and think whatever we want to call them,
Hmm.
that you're just staying connected with that and you just kind of go. See, I think I'm going to say one last thing before we wrap this up. It's that life can be more simple than we make it. If we just can trust, like, I feel like it's like we're on a river. We're in a river, right? And there's a stream, and we're in this stream, and we get into problems when we try to swim up the stream instead of just letting things guide us and take us down the stream in the proper way. Now, we have to be obviously intelligent and make intelligent decisions and not be, and we have to be rational about the things we do in our life. We don't want to do anything that's going to be harmful. But if we just listen to our gut, listen to our, trust our instinct, and just kind of move through, I think we'd all be in a really great place, but we go against that a lot. We go against the current a lot, and then that's what gets us into trouble. I personally feel that just in the amount of time that I've been in this world and done different work, I know when I'm going into a wrong direction and when I'm going in the right direction. And it seems like
Right.
you trust your guides through that, through the process that you work with people. So I just wanted to put it out there. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I really think a lot of people, if we could just get everybody on that trust side of things, it would be a much better place.
Well, and on my show, I don't want to say we talk about that a lot,
Mm.
but that comes up in the guidance. It's kind of like, okay, you need to surrender. You're thinking about it too much. You need to take a step back,
Mm.
whatever. All right, so I'm going to share one last story and then I'll go. Okay, so I talked about my like closet hangers for 3.99, and so a little over a year ago. Well, I mean, this had been going on, like, about going and buying a house to go fix.
Hmm.
Okay. So a little over a year ago, I found this house and it was rough. Let me tell you, it was rough. Like, because it was built in 1860. And so,
Wow.
do you know what shiplath is?
I don't. I have no idea.
So it's these wooden boards, like 1 foot thick wooden planks that are on the wall, and they would tack wallpaper to it, and that's how they decorated the room. So there was no sheetrock in most of the rooms. I mean, it was rough. Okay, I
Okay.
can't emphasize that more. And And my girlfriend went with me to look at it, and she was like, well, and my boyfriend, and they both kind of looked at me like, okay. And my boyfriend just said, I guess you can envision this because I can't.
Yeah. Right.
And now it's almost done. And even though people thought I was nuts, it has been one of the most therapeutic things I've ever done
Wow.
in my life.
Because it's kind of like house flipping, right? You get a house that needs some
But it's not
TLC.
even about the house flipping. I mean,
Okay.
it's going to become a rental,
Mm-hmm.
but there are these giant successes, like I got all the drywall put in, and I'm a finished work person, so I did all the mudding and taping, and I'm climbing up and doing the 11-foot ceilings, and painting everything. And I mean, I've done a lot of work in this house, and just the sense of satisfaction. I mean, I've written 7 books, and I've gotten more satisfaction doing this house and
Wow.
more like I should pat myself on the back because I'm doing stuff and it's like I don't even know what I'm doing half the time. And it's like, well, this kind of makes sense and I do it and it works. So it's
That's
good.
amazing. And that's the continuous growth of what we're going through. That's why it's like you could find different things that you're supposed to be doing, or you may have always wanted to do, and then you finally do it and you get more satisfaction out. Some people can get that just by planting a garden. No, but I'm saying it can be as simple as that, right? Because then you see like what comes out of it and you go, oh, wow, okay.
Mhm.
Just like simple things. But yours obviously doing a house is a completely different thing than planting a garden. Not to say that,
But it has just been, like I have a bad day, you get up or whatever, and it's like, I'm gonna go find my Zen. I'm gonna go like lay some mud, or I'm gonna
right.
go paint something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just been great. And it was all
Hmm.
because that little like you need to go like find a house. And so I had talked to a
Mm-hmm.
realtor a long time before and never really acted on it. Didn't see anything I liked, and just kind of like let it go. And then it came back. It's like you should call Richie and go see what's available. And this house never made it to the market. He was
Wow.
like, okay, this guy's selling this house. He goes, I think this house is your house.
It's the one you're looking
And it
for.
was in an area I wanted. I
Mhm.
like I like old. I like old. 1860. Can't get much older than that,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was I just felt like the whole project was divinely inspired and it's just been
Amazing.
again, I'm just going with that flow.
Mm-hmm. No, I appreciate that. That's a great story to end it with because again, it's just to go with what your instincts are, what your intuition is, and good things happen. This has been an amazing conversation. I always end it with one final question. And if you
Okay.
haven't seen the show, some people have, some people haven't, but I always end it the same way. And it's a deep question, but I have to do it. I told myself every show I would end each episode with this because I want to know people's perspectives. And the question is, why do you believe that we come here and incarnate?
So I don't have any, I'm going to say empirical evidence about anything. I can just kind of reiterate things that I've read over the years of stuff, that we're here to learn, and if you believe in reincarnation, we're here to clear our karma, and to get to a vibration where we're a high enough vibration that we don't have to come back. And I just
Right.
am like, okay, I'm going to work on all my stuff this lifetime because I'm ready to be done. But I already know. See, the sad part is I already know that I'm not going to be done. I mean, isn't
Mm.
that sad? Even though I've worked really hard,
So your intuition says you're not done yet.
I'm not done. There's still more stuff, but I think that I'm in a much better place than I know I'm in a way better place than where I was when I came in and growing up. I mean, I look back at my 17-year-old self and I am not the same person
Wow.
at
Right.
all.
Right. I mean, that's a step in the right direction. We don't want to be going the other way. So, this has been amazing talk. Thank you so much, Rita, for coming on and
Thanks for having me, Joe.
sharing some of your wisdom and some of the things that you've gone through in your life. I would encourage any of my listeners that if you're interested in the work that you do to check out the www.soulhealer.com. That's where you can find out your information. And Just Energy Radio is the stream that you do, right? The live
Mhm.
stream. So I always turn to the audience and say, please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the Soul Inspired. You guys are why we do this. So please share this episode if you think it will speak to someone. And I'll see you next time on the Soul Inspired. Thank you so much, Rita.
So